Hi, I'm April. I'm a singer-songwriter and music teacher, and I'm also a graduate of Berklee College of Music up in Boston. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the audition process there. We're going to talk a little bit about classical schools and how those might differ, like if you were going to apply to a conservatory as opposed to a contemporary school like Berklee, and all of that good stuff that you need to know in order to get into a music school for college. Different music schools have different focuses, different curriculums, and so of course they're going to have completely different auditions. So if you're someone who wants to apply to a ton of different schools, you may find that you have to diversify the things that you're practicing a little, but that's a good thing because it just means that you will be even more well-rounded as a musician. So let's start this off by talking about just the differences in some of the auditions that I went to or that my husband went to. He's over there off camera. He went to Eastman, so he's filling me in on the classical stuff a little bit. And then we're gonna get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of the stuff you actually have to physically practice before you go. When I auditioned for Berklee, there were three main components in my actual audition. So those were the prepared piece, improv, and sight reading. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those specific things, how you can prepare each of those, and then after that we will talk a little bit more about classical music and how to audition for a conservatory. So when it comes to thinking of repertoire for a contemporary music school like Berklee, one of the best things you can do is just focus on your actual playing or your actual voice. What are your strengths? Really play to those strengths. And if it turns out that you are not really into musical theater or jazz, that's okay. You can sing a more contemporary piece. If you prefer singing Mariah Carey, or if you prefer playing Jimi Hendrix, that's great. All you want to do is accentuate the things that are really, really great about the way you perform as a musician. If you audition for a school that asks for multiple contrasting pieces, this is a great opportunity to show off your range, whether that be your physical vocal range or the range of your instrument, or just the range of your character and your abilities. Showing that you can perform a jazz standard as well as a hard rock tune, that is amazing because it shows that you are capable of whatever they're going to throw at you. You also want to make sure that you really practice and drill those sections that are particularly difficult. If, for instance, there's a note that you really struggle with hitting, or if there's a chord that you always have trouble getting to in time, really focus in on those specifics. Take the time to practice that chord change over and over and over, even if it feels like it's driving you insane. Because those are going to be the parts that you struggle with in an actual audition. So when you're choosing that prepared piece, make sure that you find a song that feels really comfortable for you, that feels like something you could just play any old day, but also something that highlights your strengths. Now personally, I sang a musical theater song. I sang Till There Was You from The Music Man. And something that I think gets neglected by a lot of people is that if you sing a simple song simply, but really, really well, it can show off a lot of really great things. So I didn't need to add a bunch of extra runs, and I didn't need to prove that I could do all of these extra things because my performance was very subdued and I was allowed to just show that I have decent vocal technique, for instance. But we'll talk a little bit more about like the showy offier stuff a little bit later in the video, so stay tuned. When it comes to sight reading, sight reading was not my thing at all. Like, I walked into this audition petrified, like terrified of sight reading because I was so not comfortable with it. And that's okay. And I think something that a lot of people kind of don't realize is that when you go to a school audition, you're auditioning for a school. So like, what do they do at school? They teach you stuff. So if there's something you're not great at, do your best. Work really hard in the time before the audition to just like get as good at it as you possibly can, like really drill and practice. But if there's something that is a weak spot for you, don't stress over it too much because chances are it's not going to be the be-all end-all of your audition. There are way more important things. So if, like me, you are not so great at sight reading and you walk into this room and they ask you to sight read, know that you've done everything in your power to prepare for this moment and just try your best because you can totally do it. And even if you totally like flub everything and you don't remember how to do anything in that moment, you'll be fine. Everybody has weak spots. Everybody. Huge, massive pop stars have weaknesses. Everybody struggles in certain areas. So if you have a thing like that, don't worry about it too much because you're gonna be just fine. Now, if you do want to really practice sight reading, something that I find really helpful is practicing it with solfege. So if you're unaware, solfege is just referring to those do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do kind of notes there. We know the syllables from The Sound of Music, right? Those notes are really useful to practice with because if you can start remembering the intervals with those syllables, it'll be a little bit easier to kind of get them to stick in your brain. If you're a visual learner like I am, or you are just like really terrible at memorization like I am, it can be really useful to have like mnemonic devices to remember what all of those lines and spaces mean. So for some people that is remembering face, space, every good boy does fine line. Fine line? But that wasn't me, and that might not be you. So some other things that can help are just remembering intervals between different notes. If you can remember steps versus skips versus jumps, that can be really helpful. Or if you want to think of it more in terms of like a mind palace, you can do that, where you assign like a certain meaning to each of the different lines. I personally like to imagine all of the lines as branches on a tree, and then imagine different things sitting on or being in between the branches. I find that that's a really useful trick for me personally.
So what I mean by that basically is that when I look at a staff, I like to kind of imagine it as something real and tangible as opposed to just like a bunch of notes kind of existing in a line, just because it makes it a little bit easier to kind of ground yourself in reading music. So I know this isn't the most amazing tree drawing you've ever seen, but bear with me, we're going to imagine that this is a tree. And when you look at the lines and spaces, I don't want you to just think of dots on lines and spaces. Think about it as different animals and their relationship to a tree. So if instead of just a C, you can imagine a cat, it becomes a lot easier to remember what it is because you know that cats are shorter than the tree. They can't reach up to any of the branches, and you know that your cat has a whisker. You can continue doing that with D for dog, E for elephant, know that like that elephant can reach up to the first branch of the tree. You can also use that same concept for a giraffe. Like giraffes are super tall, so they can reach up to that second branch. And then in between, I like to either do like a jumping frog or a fairy. I think it can be kind of whatever feels exciting to you, but that's kind of how I learned where all of the notes are on the staff. From there, once you feel like you know what all of the notes are on the staff, you can pay more attention to the relationship between those notes. And like I mentioned before, this is not the only way to do things. You can also think about it in terms of intervals. So when I say a step, a skip, a jump, all that I'm referring to is the space between the notes. So a step would be from that C to that D. A skip would be from C to the next E, or from E to G. And a jump would be from C to maybe F or G. That also could be called a leap, so that's kind of up to you.
So just think about what works for you and go with it. Because what works for one person doesn't work for everybody. Now, improv for me is one of my strengths. It's something that I always felt super comfortable with, but that is not the case for a lot of people, and it's totally okay if it's not the case for you. When you get to an improv section of an audition, really they're not so much looking for like perfect improv, but they're just looking to see if you have that spark of creativity, or if your ear just naturally clicks into different chords. So you can literally just sing, ooh, 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 and be totally fine. You don't have to like be scatting like Ella Fitzgerald, like you're fine. Or if you're playing guitar, it's okay to just play a blues scale and then just kind of mix things up from there. A couple of tricks for practicing improv are, number one, watching a lot of people improvising on your instrument. So just seeing how different people respond to chord changes, really be paying attention to exactly what those people are doing and think about why they're making the decisions that they're making. From there, you can really work to cultivate your own voice in improvisation. Something else you can try is actually improvising over specific things. So if you go on YouTube and you search up like karaoke tracks of literally anything, you'll be able to just have an instrumental piece that you can just practice with. So for instance, if there is a jazz standard you've never heard before, that is a perfect opportunity to click that video, and do your best to just improvise what you think the melody should be. I go for jazz specifically here because jazz has a lot of different chord changes, which means it's going to really keep you on your toes.
So here what I'm doing is looking at and listening to this video of a song that I personally just don't know super well. And what I'm going to do is basically just try to sing along to it. And that can start really simply with So you can see right there that all I'm doing is just adding kind of little notes here and there that I think sound good with that chord. So they're just notes that are contained within the chord. If you want to get a little fancier, you can do like it doesn't have to be super, super complicated, and I think this is just a really fun practice activity.
Something else that you can really be focused on when it comes to improv is practicing picking specific notes out of a chord. So being able to listen to a chord being played and pick out, okay, the bottom note is and then know, okay, well the top note is you know, and then be able to kind of like pick apart exactly what the notes are in that chord. You can also practice discerning whether that's a major chord or a minor chord, or if it's a seventh chord, what kind of seventh chord is it? But if all of that seems like a lot of music theory, and music theory isn't really your thing, you can just go by intuition here. Because really, improv, a lot of it is just being creative and just coming up with things that are exciting for you to listen to. So really think about what kinds of melodies are appealing to you. Do you like songs that have a lot of bends and hammer-ons? Or do you prefer to sing songs that are like super riffy? Whatever you like to do is great, and that's just gonna help you in your performance. Now here's where we can loop around a little bit to before when I was saying you don't have to sing something super show-offy. So you can really use this opportunity to your advantage by singing or playing something that is pretty different from what you did before. If you, for instance, sang a musical theater song like I did, this is your opportunity to spice that up and just go crazy with all of these like Beyonce runs. If you were auditioning with the drums and you did like a Travis Barker thing, then here's a good opportunity to experiment with some brushes, do something different, mix it up. Now that brings me to the last part of the Berklee audition, or the specific audition that I went to, because again, they're all going to be a little different. But that part is basically when they ask, is there anything else that you would like to show to us before you leave? Which is the best opportunity ever, because you get to go in and be like, well, here's a bunch of other stuff I can show you. Now personally, I showed some songs that I had written that I had recorded by myself where I played the guitar, which I hadn't done in my actual audition. So I literally just took out my phone and I showed it to them, and I explained how I did the recording process, what program I used. I talked about, oh, this is me playing the guitar, this is the song I wrote, and it just showed a different side of who I am as a musician. So something you can really do to kind of bolster yourself is make sure that you're showing them a well-rounded musician. So somebody who is able to do a couple of different things. Now it doesn't have to be like you wrote and recorded this song by yourself and you're doing this other thing and you can also improvise, and everybody's different. So find what makes you unique and special. Find what makes you different from other musicians. And if you don't know what that thing is yet, that's okay. You're still learning. And again, you're auditioning for a school. They're there to teach you. So really, if you go into this audition with a good attitude and show that you're someone who is willing to learn and who tries things and is excited about accumulating knowledge and excited and passionate about music, then they're going to love you. So next up, I said I would talk a little bit about the classical side of things, and I did audition for a couple of classical programs, and I did get into those programs, but it really just like wasn't my thing, and I wanted to go in a totally different direction. But again, I'm stealing a lot of this information from my husband. One of the things that's really different between a contemporary audition and a classical conservatory audition is that in that contemporary or just like big music college school thing audition, you're going to be auditioning for a panel of people who you might wind up working with, or you might not. They're going to be teachers from the school, but if it's a big school like Berkeley is, they might not be teachers that you ever work with. They're just going to be faculty members who want to get to know you because they are people who work at the school. However, when you're auditioning for a conservatory, you are auditioning for your teacher. So whoever the person is who would be your private instructor if you went to the school, that is who you're going to be auditioning for. If it's not just your private instructor in the room, it'll be a panel of people who are usually going to just be other faculty members who teach your instrument for the school. Either way though, if you go to this school, you will work with these people again. What that means basically is that these people are really paying attention to you and to your personality and what you're like to be in a room with. They're paying attention to the way you play and to make sure you're proficient in your instrument, of course, but they're also paying attention to the way you handle yourself and to your personality and your kindness and your politeness and those sorts of things. So that doesn't mean you have to be like super neurotic about the entire thing and go in there like this and be even more nervous, because that's not what it's about. But what it is about is just making sure that you put your best foot forward and just be kind and approachable. The most important thing here is that you be yourself though, because if you're trying to put on a facade or put on a persona of like somebody else who you think would be a better whatever, you're going to go into that audition and it's going to be even scarier and more nerve-wracking for you. So the best you can do is be yourself, because something that's really important for the teachers is to make sure that you are a good fit for the school. So if you go into the audition and then later when you come to the school and you're a completely different person, they're going to want to ask some questions. Now don't let that scare you, because it's not really that scary a thing. It actually is a great opportunity for you to get to know people and to basically see whether they are a good fit for you, right? Like this goes both ways. You're deciding which school you want to go to. They're not just interviewing you, you're also interviewing them. But they also just want to see that you're right for their teaching style, and they want to see whether you're a good fit for the school and the program and all of those things. So don't feel like this is a moment to like pretend you are someone completely different, but instead let your personality shine, because they're going to love you because you're great. The best thing you can do is just be kind and approachable and professional. Now something you can also do, especially at a conservatory where it's like a very small department with like one teacher who is the private instructor for everybody on your instrument, is that you can actually reach out to those people ahead of time. So before you even audition, you can send them an email or give them a call and schedule an appointment to meet with them. This is a real thing. You can actually do this. And what you can do is you can actually schedule a lesson with them before the actual audition. Now this is great for so many reasons, and I sort of wish that I had done this with anyone. I don't know who it would have been though. So what's really cool about this is that you actually get to go and meet them ahead of time. You get to see the school, do everything that you want to do there, but you also get to be alone in a room with this person for a little while and get to know their teaching style in a real way. I think this is a wonderful opportunity because it allows you to get to know their teaching style. It allows them to get to know you in a way that's not as charged by nerves. And it's just a way lower stakes thing, because really you're going in there to learn something. So you're going to go into that lesson and they're going to teach you something. And in that moment, you're going to be a lot less nervous than you're going to be during the actual audition. So you're going to be able to let some walls down and really be yourself and have fun learning, because really you're just there to learn your instrument, you know, and to learn music theory and all of the other wonderful things that come with school. And this will allow your teacher to see you as a student. And so they're paying attention to the way that you learn and the way that they teach and whether those things match. But this is also a great opportunity to just get your name in their ears. They'll recognize your face when you walk into that audition, and you will know them already on a more personal basis, which is going to allow you to feel a lot more comfortable in the actual audition. So if you're auditioning for a school that does that sort of thing, then totally take advantage of it, because it's a great opportunity. And it'll just make sure that the people you're auditioning for have seen your face before and have heard your name before and can kind of put those two things together. For these conservatory auditions, you're probably going to have more than one prepared piece. Generally, the norm is 3 prepared pieces, and they should be from contrasting time periods. So just as before, just like what I was saying when I was talking about the more contemporary schools, is that you should be paying attention to what fits your sound, what fits your voice, what fits the way you play your instrument, and find pieces that you can really shine through. And try to make sure that you change up that tempo as well. Make sure that there's like something that's a little slower, something that's a little faster. Use kind of different techniques in the different songs. Again, versatility is kind of the name of the game here. You want to make sure that you are well-rounded and make sure that you can show that you can play things in a bunch of different styles. Now, to close out this video lesson, I wanted to just give you a couple of like general tips. So number 1 is make sure you dress nicely. I literally got a comment from one of the people at my Berklee audition who said, "I'm really thankful that you dressed nicely because we had a bunch of people come into these auditions in jeans today." You don't have to be in like the nicest outfit you've ever worn, but just make sure you look professional and approachable and like someone who's going to an audition. Just put your best foot forward. The next tip is to remember that they know you are nervous. They are like fully aware that this is like the scariest day ever for you, and they're going to know that in your audition. So that means that you can relax a little, because if you make a mistake, it is not the end of the world. You're going to be just fine, because you're proving yourself in a lot of different ways here. And again, one of the ways that we're preparing for this audition is making sure that we can show our versatility. So if you go into this audition and you go like, ah, and you totally mess up a note, that's okay. Because again, they know you're nervous, you're gonna be just fine, and you've already shown that you can do so much more than like that one silly note that happened in the middle of your song. Professionals make mistakes all the time, it happens. A lot of these schools will really spend the time to make sure that the audition process feels less intimidating. I know that when I went into several of the auditions I went to for college, we had actual students from the school sitting next to us as we waited to go into the rooms, which meant that I had someone to talk to who was really nice and really friendly and who was answering my questions and telling me that I looked nice in my outfit. So even if you are terrified and nervous and everything is scary and horrible, go into that audition and know that people know you're nervous and they want you to be less nervous. On that same kind of note, you should also practice the art of being distracted. And what I mean by that is, if you are not used to auditioning in general, like if you're not used to actually being in a room with a bunch of strangers who are like judging your performance very intensely, it's a really good idea for you to practice what it feels like to perform in front of people or what it feels like to be nervous. So this doesn't mean that you have to suddenly like go out and just start, performing for everybody you know, but it does mean that you should spend some time practicing being distracted. I tend to struggle a lot with remembering lyrics when I'm singing, so something that I like to do is turn on a TV show. I like The Office specifically because there is no soundtrack. So what I do is I try to remember all of the words to what I'm supposed to be singing while I'm constantly trying to watch the TV show, which causes me to totally lose my train of thought because I'm very distracted by the fact that I think the show is very funny. So this is a really good exercise because it means that in a moment of chaos, you've already practiced bouncing back from that chaos. Another thing you can do is just practice playing in front of your family members, and I know, I hate it too. I would rather perform in front of an arena of people I don't know than have to sit down and play a song in front of my parents. But it's a really good skill to be able to perform on a one-on-one basis and be able to work on eye contact. Now, when it comes to finding your eye contact can be really difficult and just like totally terrifying. So something that I like to do is find 3 points in the room. And in this case, it would be the judges' faces maybe, or like this point on their foreheads so that you don't have to actually like be staring into their eyes and like feeling all of the feelings that they are giving you in that moment. And then use those spots to focus your energy. So you're looking at judge number 1 for the first line of your song, and then you scoop over here to judge number 3 for the next part of your song. And then you go to the middle. And then maybe you dart back this way. But make sure that your eyes are staying steady on something. You don't want to be like this like the whole time because it can be a little bit distracting. It's also really useful to practice being on camera. If you're not used to making like TikToks or being on Instagram or any of those other places and like actually talking into a camera, it can be really nerve-wracking. So that can actually be a really good opportunity to practice being nervous. Whew, so take that big breath before you walk into that room and you're gonna be just fine. Remember why you love making music. Remember why you love performing. Remember all of the really fun things about just like sitting in your basement, like playing piano with headphones on. Like, enjoy it. Enjoy the process of experiencing something new. You don't go to a college audition every day, so this is a time you get to kind of savor. And again, you're auditioning them. You're seeing whether they're a good fit for you. So try to have fun. I hope you all found this video helpful. I am going to be around if you want to chat, if you want to learn about any more of this stuff, or if you have questions for me, just let me know, and I look forward to chatting.